you're tuned in to another wonderful episode of Paranormal Minds. I'm your host, Shannon Ray, and I want to thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I know some of us here on the East Coast are kind of having some rough weather, including us in Georgia. We're expecting some ice tonight, so yay ice. I don't really know if that should be that exciting or not. But tonight I was supposed to be talking to Mary D. Jones and Larry Flaxman, but unfortunately Larry had something come up, and I'll let Marie explain that. But I do want to go ahead and introduce Marie. Marie Jones has been involved with the paranormal in one way or another for most of her life, which led to a fascination with quantum physics and the writing of many of her books. Marie is also a New Thought, metaphysics minister, and spiritual counselor. She holds a master's degree in Metaphysical Studies, and she also studied Wicca, goddess traditions, mythology, and comparative religion. She worked as a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network in Los Angeles and San Diego in the 1980s and 1990s. She's wrote a ton of books, so I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about that in her career. And I'm going to go ahead and bring her in. Hi, Marie. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? So you guys are going to get some nasty weather, huh?
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be an ice storm where I'm at, and I'm just like, oh, yay, ice. But the bad part is the wind gusts are going to be horrible. So they're expecting like a lot of power outages is the biggest thing. So.
Oh, my gosh. Is this like one day, or is it supposed to last for several days?
No, it should be done pretty much by Thursday afternoon. Everything should kind of be melted by Thursday afternoon. But the effects of the power outages is what they're worried about.
Yeah.
So that could last for a while.
No. Are you right in Atlanta? Or
no, I'm a little south of Atlanta. I'm in Macon. Atlanta's getting snow, so Atlanta's lucky. We're just getting ice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So ice is just stuff to make life messy. That's all ice is. It's not even fun.
Well, I hear about it because I'm in Southern California, so we hear, oh, it's just going to be like apocalyptic, and people are rushing the stores and cleaning off the shelves. And then sometimes we'll hear people say, you know what, the storm never even hit.
Yeah.
It never happened, but you have to prepare anyway, just in case.
Yeah, honestly, I just made sure I had enough of my medicine and stuff like that.
Yeah, the essentials.
Yeah, well, and I had like Diet Dr. Pepper. If I have my medicine and Diet Dr. Pepper, I'm really going to be all right. But when I was going into Walmart today, because I was actually looking I need some socks. Wasn't going for, those kind of things. Right there by the front door, they had propane tanks, like miniature propane tanks, firewood, charcoal, all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, really? Like, I think it's like a conspiracy for these marketing people to make like people paranoid and just buy up crap.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a whole industry,
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. So, Larry wasn't able to make it tonight. You kind of want to take a moment to
give a shout out to Larry. Yeah, he's got a new job with Homeland Security, and so sometimes it's just, he's not home at the normal hours like most people are. So occasionally things like this happen. Well, but I'm always here to carry both of us. I'll speak up in both of our behalf.
Yeah, well, it's completely understandable. So I do want to go ahead and, because you and Larry kind of co-authored this book together, can you kind of take a moment to explain how you guys met and how you kind of got involved with each other?
I will. This is our 7th book, believe it or not. We're getting ready to work on another one. So I wrote a book called PSIENCE, which is PSIENCE, just pronounced science, but the silent T. And it was about quantum physics and the paranormal, and that was about 7 years ago. And Larry read it. He lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. I live in San Diego, California. And so he read the book, and he really loved it. And he got a hold of me and said, I really thought the book was great. It should be something that every paranormal researcher should read. And he had a website. He said, check out my website. Check out the group that I lead, an investigative group. And I did that. It was really cool. I emailed him back, and it just kind of went back and forth, and it just became this really close friendship really fast. We had so much in common about the way that we thought of the paranormal, and that's really what, drew us into the friendship. but enough differences too where it was like, oh, this is great, this sort of back and forth discussion and dialogue. So I had to find another book to do for my publisher, New Page Books, at the time. And I said, hey, why don't we write a book together?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we pitched a few ideas, and they came back and asked us to write about the 1111 time prompt phenomenon, which neither one of us knew anything about.
Yeah.
So we ended up researching that book and wrote it, and it just took off from there.
So if you could describe, like when you're writing a book, is there any way you can describe like how you guys individually work, your duties, and kind of like who does what for the book and kind of how it comes together?
Yeah, for nonfiction, for these types of books, it was kind of amazing that from the first book, which was 1111, 6 years ago, we got into a real easy groove where, we talk on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We email. I mean, I think I have 1 million emails from him just in the last month alone, and vice versa. We communicate constantly in text, what have you. When it came to the writing, what we realized is that as much as we can talk back and forth, eventually it came down to having to choose, okay, you're going to research and do this chapter. I'll research and do these chapters, and then we trade them off so that the other person can have their input to the chapter. So we both get to write each chapter, but we do it sort of in a back and forth way. And it's worked perfectly. We're getting ready to start a fiction project together, and that is going to be a lot different. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that because it's a lot more intensive where you have to really be talking to one another. But for nonfiction, it's worked out great.
Yeah. So how do you guys collaborate and come up with new topics and ideas? I mean, is it just something that just, pops into your brain and you're like, hey, let's just do this, or,
Pretty much. I mean, if you're going to write a book and then go through the process with your publisher of having it edited, and then you have to promote it and talk about it for a long, long time, it better be a subject that you're interested in. So really, we set out to only write books about things that we were both fascinated and passionate about. And also, on a few occasions, the publisher came to us and said, hey, would you guys be interested in writing such and such? And we were like, because the publisher suggested that we write about time travel. And we had not really thought about doing that. So sometimes the publisher will say, look, we'd love to have a book on this subject. Are you guys game? And sometimes it'll be us pitching different ideas of things that we want and see what everybody kind of comes together on. But we don't want to do anything that isn't interesting to us because this is a lot of hard work. People don't realize how much work goes into it. So you can't be bored with the material.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would definitely be pretty tough, I would imagine, for sure.
The research is like the toughest part.
Yeah.
So, why would you bother doing that on a subject you don't really care about? It would be awful. It would be such a headache.
Which I think is completely reasonable. So let's kind of break into viral mythology. I actually had you on a few months ago, and it was before the book came out. And
right.
You had mentioned this book, and I was like, well, I got to have you back on when it comes out. And this was the first open day I had when we set that up. But, with viral mythology, I have a couple of questions. Can you take a moment, just to kind of explain the contents of the new book, like a brief synopsis?
It's kind of hard with this book to do that, but basically we were toying with the idea of writing about the science behind stories, whether they're myths, stories in the Bible or other religious texts, fairy tales, fiction, you name it. We wanted to know if if these fictional tales that have been passed down for thousands of years had any truth to them. And it ended up really being a book about how ideas and information went viral thousands of years ago, the way it does today. I mean, today things go viral pretty much on the internet. or TV or movies or what have you. But how did that happen thousands of years ago before we had all that stuff? And of that information that's gotten to us, can we find any actual scientific truth or knowledge in it? Like when you look at the Greek or Roman or Norse myths, are those just made up stories from somebody's imagination, or are there actual facts and actual historical events like embedded in the stories, the way that we do now when we write fiction? So that it was just sort of a fascination with ideas and how they get from there to here and what gets from there to here. And the book covers everything from like early cave and rock art, the way that we communicated when we were primitive cave people, to, you know, the way we do now, where things go viral globally in just a matter of a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not always good stuff, you know.
Yeah. That's true. That's absolutely true. So, how did primitive and ancient cultures convey cutting-edge scientific knowledge in their stories and myths?
Well, again, if you look at, I always like to look at what's happening today, because I think it makes it easier for people to understand that, you know, I don't think human beings have really changed all that much. We just changed our surroundings. So today, somebody might write a novel, or you go to a movie or a TV series like Breaking Bad, and it's fiction. But at the same time, there's a lot of truth in those fictional stories. Truth about who we are as a people, or how we live, you know, the things that are important to us. So if you go back and you look at myths, Roman, Greek, Norse, you know, Mesoamerican, again, were these just stories that they made up to just tell around the campfire, or, you know, tell over the dinner table to entertain each other? Or were they actually trying to express true things that really happened, or people that actually lived, but they did it in the context of telling fun, well, not always fun, because a lot of the myths are violent, but in the context of telling a story, the way that we do now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, sitting around the campfire and you're telling ghost stories, well, yeah, a lot of them, that is made up, but, or it's like with urban legends, they are usually not entirely true, right?
Yeah.
But there might be a seed of truth that started the urban legend, like, you know, some of these weird legends of these serial killers or these weird creatures roaming the forest. It's fictional, it's made up, it's imagination, but at the core, there might have actually been a serial killer, or there might have actually been a report of some weird creature in the woods, and it just sort of blew out of proportion, got reinterpreted, or got retold so many times you don't even have the original story anymore. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what myths were, or are. They're stories that have a core of truth, but the core of truth is buried within the story.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I think that plays into the saying, you know, that everything has some kind of truth in it, you know? There's always some hint of truth. Even when someone's telling a lie, there's a hint of truth somewhere in that lie.
Oh, I think so. A lie is usually like the reverse of a reverse truth. But you can find the truth just by reversing the lie. The funny thing is, like, I love Walking Dead. I don't know if you watch the show. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's zombies, it's fictional, and yet it is so, honest to God, truthful about how people behave when they're in survival mode and how they turn on each other, that it's just amazing. It's just, you know, it's almost more true than if you were reading a nonfiction book about human behavior, which would be kind of boring. And, like, I didn't watch Breaking Bad, but I know a million people who did, and, you know, told me that it was just felt so realistic, because there are meth labs and people that do these things, and, you know, the struggles that we see, even though it's on a television show, it has truth. We can totally relate to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't too much do zombie stuff though, sadly, Marie. I really.
Well, there's a lot of really cool shows on that are like that, where you're seeing a totally made up fictional show, but it's like, whoa, that's happened. I've seen that happen with people.
Yeah. And it's not because I don't think zombies aren't cool for people or anything else like that. It's just because I'm kind of repulsed by the whole flesh eating. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, it's pretty violent. It's pretty gross. My mom, I keep trying to get my mom to watch it, but she just keeps turning away.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to swallow that, for some people. I'm kind of one of those skittish people,
You know what's funny? Okay, so do you watch The Big Bang Theory?
No.
Okay, well, but pick any comedy, any sitcom on TV. Now, again, those are scripted, fictional stories, and yet people will watch shows, whether it's, Modern Family or Big Bang Theory or any of these shows that are on, and they'll know people who act just like those people. So again, there's truth in there. Mm-hmm. Or they'll say, oh my God, that situation that they're laughing about, that happened to me. Mm-hmm. So I think the same thing applied to our ancestors, that their lives were often described in their stories. And so it's up to us now, thousands of years later, to try to figure out, okay, well, what's true about this and what is the made-up part?
Mm-hmm. So what is esoteric knowledge? I was getting there. It just kind of wasn't on that brain format yet.
It's just hidden knowledge, occult knowledge. A lot of people, they hear the word occult and they automatically think it's evil or satanic, but really all that word means is hidden. So esoteric knowledge is information or knowledge that was often of a spiritual nature that was kind of kept hidden from the public eye, usually for the sake of keeping the authority figures at the time from getting a hold of it, or literally killing the people that were putting forth this knowledge. Because if you have political and religious figures that want they want the population to think one way, and then you have other people saying, well, no, you don't need those leaders. This is the truth. This is spiritual truth. That's not going to sit well, and it didn't in the past. That's why we had things like the Crusades and the Inquisitions and the witch burnings and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So a lot of knowledge and information kind of flew under the radar, and it was considered esoteric or hidden or occult knowledge. And it was kind of passed down sometimes through like secret societies where the information was really protected, and it was only passed down to other members, other generations of those societies. But sometimes it's embedded in books that are left to us to interpret. Well, what were they trying to tell us? Because they couldn't be really direct always and come out and say, here's the deal. Because again, they would have been killed, they would have been executed. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was written in sort of code or just very flowery language or whatever. It was written as stories and parables and fairy tales and myths, and we have to try to decipher it and figure out what the heck they were trying to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that just kind of reminds me.
Documents.
Well, it just kind of reminds me of, what you're taught about, slaves and how they escaped and stuff like that. They had all these different hidden, like the stories with different hidden meanings of, how to find the Underground Railroad and or how to get north, and that they did the same exact thing. I mean, it's something that, throughout history, in my opinion, that has gone on, probably since pretty close after the caveman.
Oh, absolutely.
Anytime when man was evil, so to speak.
Think about it. I mean, the way that we even today spread gossip and rumors, right? Mm-hmm. They had to do the same thing. But yeah, I think ever since the dawn of humanity, we've had information that we wanted to make public and spread publicly, and we've had secrets. Mm-hmm. And so there's two ways to spread that. You don't want to spread a secret the same way you do a recipe for cake or whatever. Mm-hmm. A secret, you want to code it. You want to put it in language that maybe only one person will understand. It's like an inside joke or whatever. But yeah, it's a whole different way of communicating, depending on what the information is and who you intend to get that information.
Do you have any, like, I'm sure when you're doing your research and stuff, you've come across stories that, kind of stories and knowledge of this esoteric knowledge. Do you have one example that might be, kind of your favorite from history that you came across?
Oh, gosh. I don't know that I have a favorite. Well, I kind of do. Personally, I think there's an incredible amount of knowledge, wisdom, whatever, in fairy tales. And I've always been fascinated, like the grim fairy tales, the real violent and dark ones.
The ones that they used to tell kids at night to scare them, not put them to sleep.
Exactly, to make them behave a certain way.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by the wisdom in those fairy tales about human behavior. Because, like you said, they were almost used like a weapon.
Yeah, they were.
And I just love the fact that you can read a fairy tale and it just seems so innocent and beautiful and happily ever after. And yet there are so many morals and themes and ideas that are embedded in that fairy tale that you don't even know you're getting, because I think a lot of it kind of goes straight to your subconscious. And it's just so funny because you read, and there are some nursery rhymes that may also apply here, but you read a story like that, and you don't even know that you are getting a moral. You're getting a message. You're learning something. You just think you're being purely entertained.
It wasn't until I previously knew this information, but it wasn't until I took a children's lit class in college that they broke it down, and you start getting into this stuff. And, even rhymes like Ring Around the Rosie came from something dark, and, it wasn't even like a funny thing at all. And I mean, I understand like the fairy tales have changed over the years, and they still have, there's certain morals to it. Like, for instance, Little Red Riding Hood, don't talk to strangers in the woods. And obviously, don't just go blindly and feed your granny or something, But I mean, there's still morals in them. But back in the day, they were gruesome. They were rough.
They were violent. Kids got eaten and killed and slaughtered and mutilated. And yeah, I think they've been really toned down, for the sort of Disney generation. But the morals are still there. They may take a little longer to kind of get through to you because you're not having this, creepy story to have to deal with in your bed at night. But the morals are still there. And, I think our novels today and our e-books, the books that we read today, it's really the same thing. Somebody's telling us a story, not just to entertain us, but they want to express something that's true about the people in that story or the environment that they're writing about. And sometimes the best way to teach somebody something is not to tell them directly, but to do it indirectly in a story, because it goes right to the subconscious. The right brain absorbs it. Your left brain doesn't analyze it to death and say, oh, well, I'm not going to listen, get all naughty about it. It just goes right into the subconscious because you think you're just listening to a fun story or reading a entertaining story. So it is a good way to teach people something.
Yeah. Or a good way, as some conspiracy theorists would like to think, a good way for the government to brainwash us, right?
Well, you know what? Absolutely. Because a lot of the manipulation of ideas and information comes from, it comes from politicians and the media. And really, we are the ones that are stuck with trying to figure out, okay, well, is that true? I've read it a few places. Is that true? All my friends think it's true. And there's so much stuff that even on Facebook, there's so many articles that I see people posting that go viral, but they're like parodies. They're like joke articles. And people don't even read them. They just get all upset. Oh my God, can you believe this? So they pass it on to their friends, and they don't even read the fact that it's on a joke website.
Yeah.
Everything is sarcastic, and it's a parody. So we get it enough from the government, and we get it from the media, but we also do it to each other,
That's 110% true.
Yeah, spreading rumors. We like to do that. It's fun, huh?
Not really. I could live without it if you want to know the truth. I'm not one of those. I don't thrive off of that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, it makes me have permanent twitches and stuff. It's not good.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid. It's like, God, they don't know. Okay, 25,000 people have said that this is really true, but where did this start? Then you find out that it started with somebody telling a lie. Mm-hmm. And it's just amazing how quickly it all spreads.
Well, and the thing that disturbs me the most, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and if I make anybody irritated or mad, it's nothing personal. Yeah. But I'm going to go, a lot of this, has to do with ignorance and arrogance. And it's ignorance due to arrogance, of people not wanting to learn, or people not wanting to read, or people not wanting to look into things or facts and verify things before they just get all ticked off about them, Exactly. And that's exact. Don't just believe everything you see. And we are a society right now of everything we see on TV or we see on Facebook or social media. Oh, it has to be true, or it has to come, like we say, everything does come from some kind of truth, but you got to look at it with a little bit of common sense too. And it actually brings me to the point, today we were eating lunch, and we were eating like one of those Japanese restaurants, and you sit around and they cook in front of you,
Oh, yeah.
This little cute family of three with their teenage son was sitting next to us. And, I overheard the conversation because the dad and the son were kind of getting into a heated argument.
Uh-oh.
And the dad, literally the son's talking about things he wants and how he's going to try, to go to college to get this job making $130,000 a year, blah, 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 blah. And the dad just looks at him and goes, well, how do you think people live off $40,000 a year? He's like, they probably live in poverty. And I'm like, what are you smoking? Like, the teachers that are teaching your son right now make $32,000 to $35,000 a year. That's the kind of stuff that, it just amazes me that people in their arrogance and ignorance.
Well, yeah, then they spread it. It's almost like a disease.
And they're giving it to their kid, right there in front of you. It's
going viral. It just spreads, and before you know it, so many people are buying into the same BS that it's almost impossible to get to the truth anymore.
Yeah, it's just it amazes me. But it just kind of reminds me that that's how all this stuff spreads. It's from one person passing it down to another person. You know what I'm saying?
Really is. Yeah, and even thousands of years ago, word of mouth. There's still something to be said for the fact that somebody says something to someone else and it just passes down the chain, and like that game, whatever it's called, operator or whatever, by the time it gets to the 18th person, it's not even the same story anymore. It's been so changed and so altered, and yet that last person on the line is going to buy into every aspect of it as if it were the gospel truth.
Yeah, and it amazes me, truthfully, that we have not evolved enough to challenge thoughts and to challenge things that people say, to research it and to look at it on our own. That's just, you would think that over time we would have kind of evolved a little bit. As I'm talking about majority of the population here. I know there's a few that, including moi, that didn't just believe everything that we're told or seen, but, majority, mainstream is like that.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems is everything is so quick. People just pass information along without, like you said, they don't even check because they're busy, they're lazy, what have you. So if they would take 1 minute even and click on the link and look and see, well, where is this article posted? Who wrote it? Was it a parody, a joke? Was it, is this a reputable news source or some blogger that how do we know he or she's telling the truth? If people would just look for where some of the information they get originated, they might think twice about passing it on so quickly. Mm-hmm. But we don't. And that, the internet has changed everything because our ancestors didn't have that ease of spreading just everything so quickly and having the overload of information to deal with. I mean, that's bad enough that we have so much stuff coming at our brains. We don't even know what's important and what's not, but also trying to determine if it's even true or, if there's any truth to it at all. So a lot of times, like you said, people just say, well, whatever, it's probably true because 10 of my friends passed it on to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass it on to the next 10. It's like, oh, brother, it just keeps going and going.
And it's not our true reality, and in my eyes, sadly, the way I think of it is that it kind of makes us all like, those who do that fall into order as clones or drones,
We're like little robots. It's funny you mentioned the word reality. Okay, so look, what is one of the most popular forms of entertainment today? It's reality shows. Mm-hmm. And yet nothing on those shows are real because as soon as you put a camera into the picture, people behave differently than if there were no camera on that. People say different things. They act differently. Mm-hmm. They do different things. Half the time the producers are telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. And yet we call it reality programming. Are we out of our minds?
Yeah.
It's so different now than, when there wasn't all of this stuff that people had to deal with. Mm-hmm. They were pickier and choosier about the information that they told or passed on. Mm-hmm. God, now it's like, whatever, anything goes.
Yeah, that's true.
Anything. I love this. There's a reality show called The Secret Lives of Nashville Wives. Okay, and I'm thinking, if you're putting them on camera, how is it the secret life?
Yeah.
That's pretty much like the entire public can see what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But we love it. I'm not saying we do because I don't like those kind of shows, but people watch them, people buy into them. I can't tell you how many people honestly think that all those shows are real.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
I agree. And, I'm only guilty of watching one quote-unquote reality TV show, and it's Duck Dynasty, and it's only because my 8-year-old kid likes it. And
which one is it?
Duck Dynasty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my 8-year-old kid loves it, and he says Uncle Si reminds him of my grandfather that passed away a couple years ago. So it's a whole, family event. But it was something I steered away from for a long time, and then he went over to Grandma's house and got a whoop of it, and then we got to watch it every Wednesday night.
Oh, how funny. Well, my son and I, we love Pawn Stars.
Uh-huh.
We love watching the stuff that people bring into the pawn shop. But we know that a lot of it is just set up, and, it's scripted. The stuff that people always say, oh, my God, those guys that work in these pawn shops know so much about history.
No, they don't.
Hello, they have writers.
Yeah. There's no way that they know something about everything that walks through that daggum door. There's no person that can just spout that crap off like that.
Exactly. We know that, we're aware of that, so we can enjoy the show on that basis, on that level.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of others, and I love watching Home and Garden where they have the real estate shows where people are out buying houses. I mean, there's things like that people love to watch. And you have to kind of suspend your ability to say, well, this is all really happening just the way it does. It's like, well, how come the couple that's buying the home, always buying the perfect home, and it goes right through escrow with no problems? Now, we know that never happens, but it's a TV show, so we just kind of buy into it. And it's a new form of entertainment that is, to me, kind of strange because 5 years ago, I think it was just sort of starting maybe. 10 years ago, I can't remember any quote-unquote reality shows.
Yeah, that's true.
I may be wrong.
I think maybe The Real World was around on MTV.
Oh, that's right.
And I think that was kind of the one that broke its back, and it just went from there because that's all I remember there really being around. And then I remember Survivor came out, and then from there it just all went crazy.
It exploded. You know what? You are absolutely right. I forgot about The Real World. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I used to watch. I think I watched the first season or two, and it was fascinating. But I just still always knew, oh, these people are acting differently because there's a camera on them. But it was still fascinating to watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of still got to learn about people, even though you knew they were sort of overacting for the camera. But yeah, you're right. And then Survivor. So they have been around.
Yeah, I mean they have, but it was like a rarity, you know.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I miss like those the shows that just come on and they just have like these themes and storylines and you follow them week to week and there's no reality to it,
Right.
I have enough reality every single day. Sometimes I just want my own little world to go in.
A little bubble.
Yeah.
I know. That's why there's like all these crime and detective CSI type shows on. There's so many of them. Or FBI shows. And it's like, wow, how many of these do we need? But people want different entertainment, and some people really get into those CSI type shows.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating because we want to get lost in something, and yet a lot of times these shows are violent and they're dark, and I'm thinking, ooh, if you want to escape into something, don't you want it to be kind of fun? And but people are different, Everybody likes something different.
Well, some people, I guess, sometimes they have such lives filled with rainbows and unicorns that they just need a little bit of darkness, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. They like to live vicariously, let the TV shows be the darkness in their lives. And that's probably why we like zombie and end-of-the-world stories and horror movies and stuff like that. It's like, we don't really want that stuff in our real life, but we kind of like to look at it somewhere else,
which is 100% true, but that doesn't, to me, like, there's certain movies, I have to be careful because I have such an overactive imagination, I'm not even going to lie. So I really have to be careful about the kind of things that I set my mind to and start watching like that. Because the next thing you know, like, I'm going to be, like, going out, like, getting zombie kits and stuff. Because I'm just going to be thinking, like, the world's going to come to an end.
I do that, too. I mean, I have a really overactive imagination where if I watch something and it's violent or it has a bad ending, I have to literally correct that ending in my mind in order to feel okay. Otherwise, I get, like, really depressed. If the character dies and I'm so upset, it's like, okay, in my head I have to sort of create a scenario where, okay, well, that character actually lived. Because my imagination just takes it and runs with it. And I want to correct the bad stuff that I just saw. Mm-hmm. And it drives me nuts. So I cannot watch movies like Saw or torture movies.
Yeah.
Watch those. I can't. I will be devastated for months. So I stay away from them. Mm-hmm. I can't watch anything where children are hurt or in jeopardy. I have a real hard time with that. Mm-hmm. So, but the thing is a lot of that stuff does help us process really deep, dark, scary stuff that we hope we'll never have to deal with. It almost feels like, well, if I watch it on TV and deal with it mentally in my imagination, somehow it'll help me deal with it if I ever had to in real life. It's a weird, we like stuff that scares the crap out of us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, I know we're talking, about TV and things like that, but specifically like in the past, let's kind of go back into history here a little bit. We have a totally different way right now of, conveying information, getting out stories, government brainwashing us, whatever like that. Back in the day, they had their stories and things of that nature. What kind of, exact content, I mean, looking back in even the United States history, could you find, in stories and things of of morals and, like, what kind of stories are there?
Well, in terms of like fairy tales or myths, I mean, we could go back to, let's say, like religious texts, like the Bible, the Old and the Old Testament really was so full of stories that I think were really symbolic. So let's say the story of Noah's Ark and saving the animals from the flood. If you look at a story like that, and you also realize, you look at all these other myths and stories and other religious texts or in the myths, and you see that they're talking about floods as well. and other events that maybe we can look at and say, you know what, they're talking about a very specific time period that this flood might have happened. You can start to piece together a little bit about our actual history. Most scientists will agree that about 12,000 years ago, something happened, whether it was a sort of a flyby with an asteroid or a comet. Something happened that caused a massive flood, a global flood. Mm. And that might be why in so many of our myths, religious stories, I would think even some fairy tales, although I'm trying to think of any that mention floods. But the flood theme is very popular, and you see it all over the world, not just in one spot. So it's kind of like, wow, if there was a flood, it was a big one.
Yeah.
And it was global. And it affected these people so much so that they weaved it into their stories about their history. They wanted people in the future to know what had happened to them. Mm-hmm. And so we get these stories now, and they may sound really fantastical, like Noah's Ark, mm-hmm. but it very well could be that during the flood there was a man who tried to save a bunch of animals. Mm-hmm. And that simple story
became something.
Yeah, it just exploded and got, carried away. People got carried away with it, and it just got built out of proportion to this big giant ark with every species there was. Obviously, we're still now discovering species, but it could have very well been that there was a man who saved his family, was very heroic, and wanted to get some animals to safety so they wouldn't go extinct, what have you. And that began the legend or the myth of Noah.
Now, I do have a question as far as Noah's Ark, since you brought that up. Did you do research on Noah's Ark in reference to all that stuff when you were writing this book?
Not a lot, because we couldn't focus too much on one story, mm-hmm. or we never would have gotten the book done. So what we did is we looked at Noah's Ark, and then there are a lot of Gilgamesh, or a lot of myths and stories that talk about a great flood. Mm-hmm. So with Noah's Ark, though, people are still searching for this alleged ark, and there's been some
claims,
mm-hmm. yeah. And, for all we know, there could be a big boat that some guy built. Why would that be so far-fetched? But it's very doubtful that the story played out exactly the way it's written in the Old Testament, because, again, talking about something that somebody, later wrote about, and then it was interpreted and reinterpreted. The Bible has been altered and edited so many times, I can't even imagine that there is anything original in it.
Yeah.
But there are hints of, original stories and original core truths that remained through the ages. So what really has to happen then is if you have just one story, but no other religion or no other myth ever mentions the flood, you can kind of say to yourself, well, maybe this was something that happened just in that area. It was a small flood, or maybe it didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
But if you see it mentioned in 20 different sources and all over the world, then you kind of start feeling like, what? These people were talking about a real flood.
Yeah, and that's something kind of happened.
Yeah.
Now, can you take a moment to explain how diverse civilizations could tell similar stories and create similar art with common themes and symbols and have no apparent communication?
Well, it might be a few different ways. First of all, they might have had some communication in terms of there were nomadic tribes. There were people walking or riding, their animals, donkeys, horses, what have you, camels. There was a little bit of sea travel at the time. So it is feasible that some ideas did spread via word of mouth, but a lot more slowly than we like to think. Mm-hmm. It could have taken hundreds of years to get one idea 3,000 miles away, carried down by different, it's almost like the Pony Express. Mm-hmm. But somebody could have easily gone into another country with ideas, with here's the way we do things, or here's what we believe. And it just kind of spread over centuries. And to us, because we're looking at it thousands of years later, it looks like it happened overnight when it really didn't. Another way is what Carl Jung referred to as the collective unconscious. Larry and I call it the grid. We wrote a book about the grid, where you have literally people that are tapping into a field, it's like an invisible field of information at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's really a field of ideas, of information. There's no time to it. There's no past, present, or future. And it's kind of like today when a lot of times people will come up with the same idea for a movie or a similar idea for a song, and then everybody tries to sue each other. It's not that they're stealing from each other. Sometimes we just come up with a collective thought or a collective idea. But one of the most popular theories is that information was given to us and given to other regions across the globe, possibly at the same time, by aliens. And that's the ancient alien, ancient astronaut theory. And that we were assisted by advanced alien civilizations, which helped us make these great leaps in science and technology and medicine and understanding of our world that we kind of are having a hard time explaining just by human, evolution. So there's several different theories, and the thing is that there's a lot of evidence for each theory, and it could be all three. It could, or even more. I mean, it could be that there were so many different things going on at the time that you had word of mouth, you had some other civilization helping us assist with our development, or that people just in two different parts of the world were getting ideas at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So if you could tell, the viewers, of course we want them to buy your book, but could you, take a moment and kind of, break down about how viral mythology, would enlighten a reader?
Everybody is a victim of viral mythology. And the today we're creating the viral mythology of tomorrow. So thousands of years from now, a bunch of archaeologists are going to dig up us, our present. They're going to dig up our computers and our cell phones and our email and our social networking. They're going to dig up our clothing and our homes and our cars, and they're going to look at all of that stuff, and they're going to tell stories about us, about who we were and what was important to us, mm-hmm. and what information we were trying to pass down, what we thought was important for future generations to learn about. What really opened our eyes writing this book is how an idea can travel, and also why certain ideas go completely bonkers, viral, and others don't. And there are reasons for that. And usually, it has to do with getting an emotion out of somebody, whether it's rage or hatred or joy or lust or happiness, what have you. If you have an idea that gets somebody excited, they're going to pass that on to someone else, much more so than if you give them an idea that makes them, just kind of go, yeah, all right, whatever. If it's boring, if it's not something they can really use to make their life better. I mean, there are specific reasons why something as silly as Sharknado, did you see that movie?
Oh, my Jesus. I boycotted it. I draw the line at a Sharknado, okay?
Okay, but you know what? That thing exploded all over the internet. Oh, my God.
I know, I think everybody watched it but me. I just drew the line. I was like,
yeah.
there is no way I'm doing a Sharknado, okay?
It wasn't even funny.
I mean,
it was just awful.
I did the big giant spiders. I'll do all the, but I draw the line when you mix a tornado with a shark. The Sharknado thing,
they're just
that was it.
Putting them out too. But you know what? Whoever was behind that campaign was brilliant, because what they did is they took some really cool ideas and images. They went viral with them. It just spread like wildfire, even long before the movie ever came on the air. So by the time the movie went on the air, no matter how crappy it was, it already had a huge, huge viewership. because of the viral campaign. And they played on humor, they played on just our shock of a tornado with sharks. They played on our idea of, could this really happen? Because there actually have been storms where fish and frogs have fallen from the sky. So whoever created that campaign, they knew what they were doing. The fact that the movie was crap almost didn't even matter at that point.
Oh, it mattered to me. It completely mattered to me.
I watched. Now, I have to say that, there are other things that go viral. If you're on Facebook, this is a wonderful way for people to really get what the book is about. Go on Facebook. Watch what pictures, what memes, what YouTube videos go viral. How 20 of your friends are sending them to you or tagging you. You got to see this. And you really start to see patterns. You really start to see, oh, I see why this is funny. Mm-hmm. This is really gross. This is horrifying. This gets me angry. You really start to see how they play on our emotions and how you end up then spreading some of that too, because it got you all riled up as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's a kind of how we just spread it along, and we spread it all along now, not even by word of mouth, but by stroke of finger, You
click, and there it goes to 80,000 of your closest friends.
Yeah. And, that's something like I'm really careful about, as having this show and being a paranormal investigator too. I see people post a lot of stuff, especially people in the field and, that have shows. They post all the time this stuff about, haunted houses, like that one with the exorcist boy recently. I don't even know where that was at. But, they post all this stuff, and I'm just like, look, I have people on my friends list that look to me for advice and guidance in certain things with in the paranormal field. And if I'm posting this crap, even if I'm posting as a joke, they might not see it that way, and they might take some kind of reality out of it.
Right.
And that's, I try to definitely be very careful.
You're the one that they're kind of depending on who's going to actually check it out and see if it's true or not.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to leave that up to you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're like the last stop.
Well, you know what? Even about that boy, that was everywhere on the internet. It went everywhere on the internet so fast that Zach Bagans from GAC supposedly ended up buying the house.
It was, I heard that. It was just like...
But, here's the kind of lesson that I've learned through the years when it comes to demonic hauntings. Demons don't haunt houses, they haunt people. So it doesn't matter what house you're in, they're going to follow you. So, I've never heard of demons haunting houses. I've heard of demons haunting people. So, there's just I have such hard times with these things that even go viral and are spreading on the Facebook like wildfire, because I struggle with the reality of, what I know and what I've learned and what I've studied compared to what's going on Facebook.
Right. It's almost different world. It's almost like two different worlds. Mm-hmm. The world of, seriousness.
Yeah.
And the world of whatever, whatever floats your boat, fun, entertainment, the ooh factor. Ooh,
Well, and I find myself, even with the show, having to gauge myself to a certain extent, because I have people on the show that are from what I consider the mainstream paranormal field, which is what people see on TV, in my opinion. And then I have people on the show from what I consider, the real paranormal field, so to speak, and there is a huge gap, and there's a difference between the two, and people don't want to admit that, but there's a huge difference. I've had people on the show that couldn't even answer questions about stuff that they supposedly specialize in, and they're on TV. Yeah, and, those are the kind of things that make you go, WTF, what is going on in this world today?
WTF?
I censor myself, too.
That's kind of voice, too. That's funny.
So, but yeah, as far as viral mythology go, I think that, the book itself is fascinating to be able to look at things in a different perspective and to really think about information and sources of information and information as a whole.
Yeah, What we believe.
Yep.
And what we believe may not be true.
That is 100% true. And, you know, what we believe to be reality might not even be reality whatsoever.
Exactly.
Let's keep that in mind, too.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
There's a lot of overlap here.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of feel like I sound like Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory right now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
That was a good movie.
but what kind of big things do you have coming up? Are you working on another book? Are you able to tell us what the new book might be about if you are working on one?
Well, Larry and I are working on a fictional project called Grid Walkers that is actually based on some of the scientific research that we have included in all of our books, but most specifically the grid. So it's about interdimensional entities and different realities, and it's a science fiction adventure it's going to be fun because it's science fiction, but it's factual. So we call it science faction.
Yeah.
And just, you know, we're doing a lot of speaking, so we have to write a lot of presentations. That's going to keep us busy this year, too. Mm-hmm. So,
what kind of responses are you receiving from your book, The Viral Mythology, I should clarify?
It's been great. This has been one of the most popular books. It just came out, too, because the topic, I think, the timing was right. I think a lot of people are getting it. Mm-hmm. They understand this is, wow, you know, I've always wondered how everything goes viral, and I've always wondered if our history was really true or if it's just the ideas that survive down the road. Mm-hmm. So it's been really great, really good.
Now, I do, you know, have a question. With all this viral stuff, you know, I want to kind of do a comparison and a what if for the future, so to speak. You know, with all this viral stuff now compared to how it was done back in the day, what is, you know, our imprint going to be on the future? You know, any insights on that?
Well, Sharknado.
No, Jesus.
Grumpy Cat.
No.
Twilight, the Twilight vampire.
I might be okay with Twilight. I might be okay.
You know what? It's going to be...
Our 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, my Jesus. That movie hadn't even came out yet. That's going to be...
It's going to be the stuff that they can dig up and really look at that... You know, that it's going to be the fact that we communicated with these little things that we carried around everywhere. Mm-hmm. That our whole lives were on these, you know, computer things. They may have different names for them. And just everything that happened that's important to us that has gone viral, whether it's a news event or a tragedy or a natural disaster, or just the goofy stuff that we all crack up over on something like Twitter or Facebook. That's the viral mythology we're creating.
And, you know, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You know?
Neither do I.
And I don't, you know, my whole thing is like when I'm thinking about it and I'm thinking about people that are going to look back on us, they're going to kind of think that we were people that, you know, look back and we were just so consumed with entertainment, what entertained our mind and not what enlightened and knowledged our mind.
I think I agree with you. We were distracted. Mm-hmm. We weren't really worried about what was important enough. I think it's changing, but yeah, they're going to say, wow, they were distracted.
I don't think it's going to really change much in my lifetime, sadly. You know, I kind of see it, I see it kind of going like worse because so many more kids are plugged in now, you know, and
yeah, it is going to be strange. It's just, you know, to see kids that they don't play outside anymore. They're just stuck on their electronics and how dependent we are. It is. It's going to be strange.
It definitely is. And, you know, what else amazes me is, you know, just how easily believable everything is and no one wants to pick up a book. You know?
Exactly.
And even like now your books are on your electronics, you know, sometimes I just like to actually just touch a book. God forbid. Yeah. You know, I have a Kindle, I do. But sometimes I just like to touch a book. It's that whole ambience of a book, a warm place, and a cup of hot tea, you know?
Right. Oh, I love books. I hope they never disappear completely.
No, because they challenge, you know, they challenge your mind and they open you up and enlighten you to new and more wonderful things and keep you from being ignorant, arrogant.
That's right. That's true.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to thank you so much for being on tonight, Marie.
You're so welcome.
And once again, Marie's website, which I have not said it, but it has been on your screen all night long, and it's www.mariedjones.com. You can get the new book, Viral Mythology, from Amazon and everywhere else. Please definitely go check it out because, it'll be awesome to read how we're hopefully going to prevent becoming clones, because I think we're becoming like little robots.
Yes, little droids.
I do. I mean, it's kind of scary. That's one thing I loved about, this topic is because I love that, you're bringing light to it and challenging people to maybe kind of think outside their own box.
I hope so.
I like it too. Well, thank you so much, Marie, for being on. And her website and the book cover up on your screen again is www.mariedjones.com. And you can get a book from Amazon. I don't have the Amazon website on your screen, but if you don't know it, you need help. Just Google it. We will see you next week. And next week, I will have on L.A. Marzulli, and he will be talking about the thingies with the elongated heads, which he calls Nephilian. And we will talk to him next week. All right, you guys, have a great week. And once again, thank you, Marie, for coming on. I greatly do appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
All right, you guys, you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you back here next week. Same time, same place. Be sure to tune in. Bye, guys.